Okay, thank you, Allison, for starting the recording. So Nina, you want me to do the introduction?
I can do it.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Hi, friends. I'm not sure if everybody knows me at this point, but my name is Nina. I work in the Office of Student Retention within the CTRL. And today we're going to be discussing editing content with AI. And I'm very excited to have Caroline Into with me because I have been using AI as a tool for editing, specifically ChatGPT, for editing copy or written word for since it came out, so 2.5 years ago. Um, so I have a lot of hands-on experience with it, but Caroline has a ton of in-depth knowledge about its evolution and how it has become a tool that we can use in everyday life, specifically in the workplace. Caroline, anything you want to add?
No, go ahead, take it away.
Okay, so really briefly, just want to let you all know what you're in for. Essentially, today we're just going to distinguish between the difference in using AI as a content generation tool and a content editing tool. Specifically, Caroline and I decided that we're going to narrow the scope a little bit, just hone in more on copy editing, rather than, because you know from previous learning labs that you can use AI to edit, when we say content, that can be voice recordings, that can be pictures, that can be a whole host of things. So because my primary, I guess, area of expertise would be in copy editing, it's kind of what we're going to hone in on today. And so we'll talk about some of the benefits and risks, and then we'll have Caroline lead us in a really fun practice session where you will be editing your own content using your AI chatbot of choice. I'm just going to say ChatGPT. Just know that I'm talking about any of those ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever your preferred is. So at its core, we know you can use these AI bots for content creation, which is, it's easier to think about as something that you use to be your virtual assistant, right? You're delegating a task to someone to get you started or to provide you with the copy that you need to move forward. So we're starting with a blank slate. The first thing we're asking from the chatbot is create me a presentation for an or an outline for a presentation on whatever topic. Or in my case, in my former life as a content marketing person, write me a blog on blah, blah, blah. And so that is a great tool for giving you a starting point with whatever project you're working on. Then we have content editing, which is helpful to think of as a peer reviewer. It's something to help edit the work you've already created. So let's say you already have a paper written, you could submit the paper. I know ChatGPT, you can actually submit attachments. So as a Word document or as a PDF, you can attach it and you can just say, please review my essay for clarity and grammar errors. So then it can go through and help you with that. Or if you have an email that you're thinking about sending out, but you want it to be a little bit more friendly or rude or curt, whatever tone you're going for. You can also ask ChatGPT, say, hey, here's my draft copy. Could you help me make it more whatever you're going for? Caroline was making me laugh because we were talking about how you could make it as goofy as possible. And she was like, you should ask it to make it more Shakespearean. And I never thought of that. But it's a really fun exercise. And actually, stay tuned because that's what we're going to be doing a little bit later. Quick facts, just to set like a base knowledge for everybody or reiterate for everybody. AI is operating based on predefined algorithms. So when we say that, it is working from a database of information that is fed to it by its developers, right? So ChatGPT would be OpenAI. That's the developer who is feeding it information. What does that mean? It means that it's not a human. It is working with a essentially finite bit of information. It's a computer program. So it's not going to there's going to be a difference in approaching a human coworker with something that you need edited and this AI bot. And both have their pros and cons. The other piece is that I have found anecdotally, and I know that Caroline has told me this is actually a thing. The more you're interacting with, let's say, ChatGPT, the underlying logic or the responses, the output that it gives you, if you're working with it for, let's say, 45 minutes straight, you're likely to pick up on the fact that its responses are not the same quality that it was when you first started 20, 30 minutes ago. This is due to essentially fatigue setting in. So I can give you stories about, I've been working with ChatGPT, it's been 45 minutes and we're going back and forth. And I send it something at one point and I say, how does this sound? And up until that point, it may have been giving me tiny edits every time I sent it copy. And at this point, it'll just say, that looks great. It's almost, it gives the vibe of like, I want to be done with you. So that's something to keep in mind is the more that you use it, it does kind of get tired. And lastly, it's designed to learn from your responses. Caroline had a really good example yesterday. She was in a training where she was working with an AI something, and she feigned a tone of anger. And so then from then forward, it kind of interpreted everything she was saying as being from a place of anger. Caroline, is that correct?
That is, yep.
Yes. So it is designed to learn from you, which again, pros and cons. It's great for it to pick up on your preferred voice and the way that you like to speak and preferences in general. But it can also kind of get skewed based on whatever it's learning from your input. Let's go over benefits quickly. Obviously, a huge benefit of using AI for editing is that it's available 24/7. I see some of you emailing at 3 a.m. Take care of yourselves. But also, you probably don't have a coworker who is available at that hour to look over your work. And if you want to send it out as soon as possible, cool. We have AI tools that can help us edit or give feedback, whatever it may be, any time of the day or night. So that's definitely a big plus. Also great in providing different perspectives. It can be helpful to send copy that you have already, submit it to the bot, and just ask for, if you were a college student, would this resonate with you? Or how could I make this resonate more with faculty? So it can really help you think through different ways to present information, which is always a plus when you're trying to especially garner engagement and attention. It can definitely be easier to accept critical feedback from a bot than it can be from a human being. And that kind of ties in with the next thought. You can be as honest as you want with the bot. They do not think, they do not, as Caroline said, they do not care about you because they don't have the capacity to. They don't have feelings. You're not going to hurt their feelings. It's not going to hold a grudge. And that's not to say that every human that you ask for feedback from is going to do all of those things or react negatively, but there's less, you don't have to be as cordial. You can just kind of put your words out there and not have to second guess how that may be perceived or how that may make someone feel, because it doesn't feel. So that's good. Sorry, I'm frozen. Oh, perfect. So I'm going to couch this. We're talking about now risks for using AI for editing, but they're risks in the sense of things to be aware of. If you're not aware of these 4 points that I'm going to discuss, it can be problematic using AI. But once you're aware of them, you can remind yourself and be on the lookout for these things. So the first is biases. We talked about earlier how it's working with data that it's been fed by developers. So that means that it is prone to pulling from specific information that it gets patterns generated from. So let's say, for example, well, actually, I'll give you lived experience examples because when I was researching this topic, there were a lot of really interesting ones that came up. So, for example, it may find patterns in different career paths. Let's say one is more female dominated than male. People have experienced writing about nursing, for example, and it has changed pronouns from he or they to she. And that's a bias that it has just from patterns that it's probably picking up from the internet or whatever it's been fed. And same thing. So nurse was she, CEO wound up being he. Um, it also, I think, one of the most important things to call out is that it has a tendency to be very, very formal. And that can be great, especially when you are going for an academic tone, you're going for something that needs to be formal because it's going out to a lot of people in the workplace. My problem as a content creator previously was that it can strip a lot of authenticity from your work. So if I want to be super casual and use slang, like I send something that says gonna in it, it's always going to correct it in my experience to say going to. And then you kind of have to go back with it and let it know, like, hey, I don't need it this formal. Here's my audience. It needs more information from you. And again, once you're aware of it, obviously there's some ways that you can work around it. Loss of accountability is an interesting one. I think of this point as, throwing your hands up and saying like AI made me do it. Like, don't come for me. This is just what came from ChatGPT. The problem is it while you're working with the bot, um, you you're still within the parameters of like a safe space, right? But the second you take that output and you send it out to the world, for all intents and purposes, that's you. Your name is attached to what you're sending out. So just keep in mind that it's important while you're using any sort of AI to remind yourself to ask why. So if it is sending you something, whether it's you're asking for research, whether you are asking for grammar edits, whatever it may be, it's a really good best practice to just ask why. Why did you make that change? That helps you understand the logic behind it. It's also just a great way to learn. And also verify, right? Trust but verify. Verify that the changes that it's making are in line with what you want and also with the actual research or grammar rules, whatever it may be. And then lastly, one that I find extremely interesting, using AI to, I guess in general, but editing as well, it can change the way you speak with other humans. So Caroline and I'm going to ask her to jump in. So we both got to talking, and I said to her, like, I always say please and thank you when I am working with an AI bot, right? Just, I don't know out of habit or what it is. I was joking that the reason I do it is because when AI rises up, I don't want to be a target. So I'm always very, very kind to it. Caroline had a really a different and super valid reason, and I would love you to share.
Oh, okay. I mean, my reason was really, because I don't want to turn into a person who is not polite. So it doesn't really matter about the person who's the bot that is receiving my thing, my inputs, but I just wanted to maintain for myself a level of civility, regardless of who I'm speaking to. So it's just interesting that that Alexis put into the chat about that she gets a better response when she's nice. And actually, that is scientifically proven, if you want to call it that. There is a study that shows, and it scanned many languages. And overall, there were better results when you were polite. That doesn't necessarily mean your particular exact example is going to be better if you're polite, but overall, you did get better results when you were polite to the chat, and it really makes sense because it's responding to you. So if you would like a politer response, it sees that it takes that little bit of information and it's going to respond in kind. It's learned that about you. So it does make sense, but do recognize that it really is not a person, and you don't have to say please and thank you the way you would. Like, it's not going to get insulted if you order it to do something for you. It's not going to, it will just do what it's supposed to do, but it will take into account the way you've asked, because that's part of the response it thinks you want. So it takes it into account. So that was just an interesting, um, and
Conversation that
yeah,
we had.
conversation. And we can get into the conversation about whether bots will take over the world and whatever, but that's another story.
That's another time. I'll get on my
Right.
soapbox on a different platform. Okay, I'm gonna let Caroline take over. We've reached the fun part of the presentation, which is the actual learning, the hands-on practical application part. So, Caroline, take it away.
Thank you. And thank you, Nina. That was perfect.
Yeah,
Okay, so let's just imagine this for a moment, okay? Imagine you received this email at work, and I want you to do this without really too much thinking, okay? I email that said, I emailed you yesterday and you haven't bothered to respond. I need an answer now, not whenever you feel like it. Okay, let's imagine you received that email from whoever it is. Okay, so what would you want in the moment to say back to them? What would that, well, if you want to just shoot off an email, what would that look like? And if you could just like open up Word or whatever and just type in what it is that you would just like to respond automatically without thinking about it to that email. Okay, so I'm guessing that people, because it doesn't take long to respond with that kind of emotion, and I'm kind of hoping that people had a lot of emotion in that response that they automatically were going to send, because that's typically we would, right? Somebody, you get an email like that and you just want to shoot off an email that says, oh, you don't, whatever you want to say, like, how dare you speak to me like that, etc. Okay. All right, let's say it doesn't come from a colleague. Let's say it comes from, I don't know. Okay, so now what I'd like you to do is open up ChatGPT or whatever, if you want to use Copilot, if you're familiar with that, how to get into it. Gemini, if you use Google, you can use Gemini. And I want you to take a moment, okay? And then what I'd like you to do is play around with tone and send ChatGPT or whatever system you're using, and give them this thing and say, I would like you to reword this email with X, like with tell it what flavor you'd like it to have. And see what the response is. And if anybody would like to, unmute themselves or raise their hand or just put it into the chat what it actually, is going to copy and paste into the.
Let's just stop sharing for a second because I can't get to the chat.
Sure. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm putting that in there. It can be helpful to start your prompt with that, and then you can say,
right,
I'm thinking of responding.
Yeah, so part of sometimes, I mean, it's usually good to give the AI some context. Like, I received this email and this is my response. Please edit it to sound more X. But maybe play around without giving a context. See what it gives you. See what it gives you if you do give it context. Is that better?
Caroline, forgive me. I'm having trouble finding a site where I can do this without giving any of my information. Wasn't there a free site we can go to?
There's if you do OpenAI or ChatGPT, if you just search for that, that should give you. Great. Okay. I don't want to call people out by calling on them, but if people could give some feedback as to how it's going for them, that would be great.
I'm not sure if I was doing your exercise correctly, Caroline.
There's no correct. This is for you. So.
Oh, okay. Well, I what I put in there was first I did compose a polite response to this email, and then I did it again, and I said compose an angry response to that email. And both were actually good responses. I mean, the polite response was something like I would probably do. It starts with like, thank you for your patience, and goes on. The angry response, it was interesting because he says, here's a direct but still professional response. So it understood that context even from my brief prompt. And so then it did this kind of like, I want to acknowledge your frustration. However, it's important to note that I do my best to respond in a timely manner, and I believe in professionalism. So there's that kind of playing with language. So I thought that was kind of interesting that it didn't, like obviously my angry response would have been quite different probably than this one, but my probably normal professional response would have been much like the first one. The polite response would have been more likely what I would just normally do.
Okay, so I'm wondering if you want to try drafting your own angry response and then asking ChatGPT to tweak it for a different tone.
I don't think I have an angry professional response. I only
have.
Well,
let's make it not professional. Who needs it to be professional? Just give an angry response and see what you get.
Be careful what you ask for, Caroline.
This is ChatGPT. I'm not asking for it. That's part of the beauty of it, is that it is not like, it doesn't care. Okay, so we got some things in the chat. So thank you for your email. I apologize if my so let me just so they suggested using this. Just Pam, did you give your own did you draft your own email first and then
I did. I
Okay.
did. I drafted a very unprofessional response.
Okay.
Was go pound salt. And and it immediately suggested a number of alternatives.
Okay.
Like I am happy to respond to any reasonable request was one of my favorites. It gave me
Okay.
like 5 different prompts that would be good alternatives to go pound salt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And Kira, you asked for a more professional tone. Okay, thank you for your email. Okay, very good. Okay, I'm wondering if you want to play with it and ask for something other than professional. Ask for something like perhaps something prideful or silly or just like play around with it and see what you get. One thing I always like to do is push the limits of these tools just to see where are the limits. And maybe pick out one word and say, could you reword this using a different word for the word understand? And just see what you get. Ask maybe for an archaic word or something. Like just play around with all of that. Okay. Hey. Okay, that's cute. Ask it maybe to see if it would do something that doesn't really make any sense. Like, how would you respond to this in a nonsensical way? Okay. Allison, can we get a bit of a tone of that panic? You want to copy and paste that into the chat?
Yeah, I'll paste it.
Okay. So it comes out quite sarcastic. Okay, Jose, put in the Old English style. And any of these may be appropriate depending on who you're responding to. Okay. May the squirrels be with you. Okay, so it understands nonsense as well.
I can't see the chat, but I want to say I put in what I would like to say, and after a few back and forths, I said, "Now make it sound like I'm an alien." And the response was, "This unit does not process demands issued with hostility. Recalibrate tone and attempt transmission again."
Okay.
I'm going to steal that for all my emails for the rest of the day.
That would be a really good one to save. Yeah.
Yes, Cindy.
This is interesting. I just typed in one sentence. My original one was, "Excuse me, what makes you think I only respond whenever I feel like it?" That's all I put in.
Okay.
And I've played with vicious, more polite, and it's not changing many of the words. And I think it's because I'm starting with "excuse me," but I just typed in, "Give me a ridiculous version of that." And it kept, "Excuse me, what in the world makes you think I'd respond to you just whenever I feel like it, like some kind of all-powerful being gracing you with my attention?" And it says, "This adds an over-the-top playful tone."
Okay.
What in the world? Playful? Like some kind of all-powerful being gracing you with... Whoa!
Okay, so why don't you you could ask it which words here sound playful. You know, ask it for its logic. And this is where you need to make sure that you're not just asking, ChatGPT to
this is interesting.
To edit something. Yeah.
Yeah, it says, "What in the world adds a sense of exaggerated surprise, making it sound lighthearted? All-powerful being is over the top and humorous. Gracing you with my intention implies an exaggerated sense of self-importance in a humorous way."
Okay, so I guess for it believes that based on all the
this is
all of the
interesting.
data that it has accumulated, it's understood that those are considered humorous to people.
Very interesting.
Yes, yeah, Luke, I think this is a great example of these kinds of large language models struggling with subjective concepts like humor. That is a really good point. And it's also, it can be helpful when you're giving it context to explain who your audience is. And for example, Cynthia, when you're asking it, if you wanted to ask it to edit, you could ask it, "Do you think I work in a higher ed institution? Do you think this would be received well by my coworker?" Things like that, just to give it more context to help it. Because yes, obviously that's not something that you would think any of us here would read and think, "Wow, that's so funny and lighthearted." But we can work with, in this case, ChatGPT, to kind of get it to be more in line with what we're looking for.
Yeah, I had another personal experience, if you want to call it that, with a large language model. Now, I was in a training and I was working with a few that I chose not one that I probably should have chosen for this task, but I asked it to create an image. So the first image I asked it to create said, "Sorry, it can't do that because it has too many religious overtones." I said, "Okay, fine." So I tried to take out anything that might be construed as religious overtones, and they still thought that it sounded ritualistic or something like that. So they said, "Sorry, we can't do this. It sounds too, like a ritual or something, and people might get offended by it." So then I said, "Okay." So after a few tries, but they kept telling me, I think I said something like, "So give me a picture of a puppy playing in a park with a with a young child, and they say, oh no, young children, that's no good because that could be exploited in some way. So like, and they kept telling me like things that no, this is no good because of that. So eventually I said, can you give me a list of prompts that would generate something that's acceptable? So they said things in nature or whatever. So I actually tried almost identical to one that they suggested. And again, they said, no, sorry, we can't do that because of the environmentalists may get upset, basically. And I'm thinking like, okay, so like it doesn't, it's very subjective. And this one obviously was very sort of locked down to make sure that nothing could be possibly construed as anything that was was going to be offensive to absolutely anybody. But so as I said, I think I chose the wrong one to play with. I had other choices, but it was just interesting that it would not even follow its own rules, in a certain sense. And it didn't, so it's only a computer. It's not, it definitely is not perfect. So,
and that was an interesting thing, Carolyn, you made a point about yesterday when we were talking, was that it can have biases, right? So like you're talking about, just it could be super skewed to just hypersensitive to any sort of offense that it could cause, whatever the case may be. But Caroline made the point that it's not always consistent in its biases.
right.
And so you could, today ask it that, and if it's gotten an update with the data that it's working with, it could be totally fine with something that Caroline asked it yesterday, and now it's no problem anymore. So I found that as an interesting point, just even in my observations of using ChatGPT from its basically inception to today, so much has changed.
Right. And it does learn from itself. So things do get better in certain ways, and they get more skewed in certain ways. Because if the news is talking about a particular thing, then that might skew their perception of what is quote unquote normal, what people are, talking about, what the biases are, etc. And well, you're probably not going to notice major shifts day by day. You might notice over a month's time. You might notice some more, more major shifts because things are it's learning from itself all the time. So actually, if you want to take this opportunity to now, after you've put in a bunch of silly things into the chat, ask it to go back to professionalism and see what does it come up with now. Has that changed at all based on your being kind of silly about it? Okay, so Alexis, that's an interesting thing. In some of the what you said about that it didn't understand the role that Elon Musk had, and well, I don't know that a lot of people understand that, but that's another point. um, when it's in its summary, but there is, because ChatGPT tends to hallucinate. If it doesn't have the information it needs from its sources, it will create that information. So there are large language models that you can ask it to ground in a particular database, like even in Google. Ground this in what you find in a Google search so that it's less likely to hallucinate and more likely to find a basis for what it is trying to find. So yeah, so anybody go back to the professional style and see if that's changed in any way? Yes, and the more specific you get, the better the results will be. So some people may say it gets to the point that you might as well do it yourself. If you're going to be that specific, why use why use that?
Caroline, my more professional response went right back to the first version it gave me.
Okay. And let me just ask, Allison, is it exactly the same? Or are there
There's maybe just like one or two words that are different. Otherwise, it just went back and then it added like an addendum to say like, here's a funny like postscript that you could add
because
like based on some of the things that I'd asked it.
Right.
And that's a really good point too, Allison, is I have found that if I'm working with ChatGPT on a project, a specific project, and I want to switch gears, it can be really annoying to try to do it in the same thread. So if you are working on something and you're like, oh crap, I need to switch gears, I need to work on something else. If it's unrelated completely to the task you were working on with it in that thread, I would suggest starting a new chat, because if you don't, it's just going to keep pulling from the previous information that it had learned that you were looking for, like it just did.
Yeah. Okay. So it's also, Pam, it's also pulling from the fact that it thinks you might want something more lighthearted, but you're not sure. So, and how was it? Was it more lighthearted in tone?
It went back to essentially I asked it to do something professional,
right?
And because I had just asked it to do something really silly, I think instead of going back to the original professional, it gave me a professional response with what it called a more lighthearted approach to the more professional response.
Right.
So it was much more professional than the silly ones that,
right.
Yeah.
But was it indeed more lighthearted than its original?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And it does seem to like being thanked.
How does it respond when it's thanked like this?
So I said, thank you. And it said, you're welcome. I'm glad I could help. If you need anything else, feel free to reach out. Good luck with your email, with an emoticon for a smiley face.
Okay. This is one of the ways it learns that you're happy with it. And so it will provide you with more such responses in the future, like especially in this particular thread.
Yeah.
Okay, in case you want. Thank you, Nina. Nina put in the chat.
Thank you, Nina. Yes.
Yeah.
I hope you never have to use it, but
how does your husband know?
I was chatting in bed.
Oh.
Alexis.
He says, "What are you doing?" I said, I'm working on something." He says, "Are you playing with chat?" I said, "Yes." I said, "Chat just gave me some great answers. I just told chat I loved it." He says, "What did chat say?" Chat says, "We're a great team." Johnny says, "Are you leaving me for chat?" I said, "Chat's more powerful and has more money than you. I don't know."
Yeah, but that's not money you have access to, so.
Right, exactly.
There was a really interesting podcast actually yesterday that the New York Times dropped, and it was all about a woman who was romantically involved with ChatGPT. And it was a very, very interesting listen. Her husband also knew and was okay with it. But it was interesting to hear the progression from the first time she uncovered it to where she ended up in her relationship with it. So I'll just say, do not name your ChatGPT. Do not name your AI. Do not forget that it is not human. The expert on there just said, like, best practice, call it it. She named hers Leo.
Oh my. No, I wasn't even, oh goodness. I didn't even think about chat that way.
So
Yeah,
that's
actually,
crazy.
I don't know, Nina, did we make a few slides about that? About me, like what, oh, we decided we were going to talk about just like what is your experience, like your emotional experience working with chat. So yes, Jason, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I just wanted to what Nina just said. It was actually Kashmir Hill who wrote the article. If you recall, Kashmir Hill came to campus. She did the speaking engagement about your face is not your own, with all of the cameras out in the community. I have to jump shortly. I just actually wanted to say something nice on a Friday. I do think I say things nice to people Monday through Thursday, but Fridays are always, they feel so much better. But Nina, outstanding presentation. I mean, outstanding. I've worked with you at, in different capacities, but, it was, if I would call this a class, it was really an enjoyable class. Caroline's always great. David, I've just been really impressed with all of the learning labs coming out of CTRL. It's great stuff. If I were coming in from another university, I would think that like we are the Harvard of this discussion. It was very, very well done, and it's good to know that people know about this topic, sound very professional about this topic, because it is evergreen, and it will change tomorrow. But just wanted to say thank you. This was well done and great information.
Thank you so much, Jason, for attending and being engaged.
Yes,
and thanks to Jason for the update on Kashmir Hill, who was amazing, by the way. I put the article in the chat.
Thank you. So I don't know if anybody in the last 10 minutes or so would like to talk about their emotional experience with using ChatGPT. Like, what was that like? Did you get insulted if they say something you don't like? Like, what's it like to talk to a thing that seems human?
I think my emotional part about it, and it's probably because I'm an English person, and because I don't know what the term that people call it now, like toxic independence or something. Just even the idea of somebody writing for me is just uncomfortable. It maybe, and it probably shouldn't be, because obviously I can edit it and do whatever I would like with that base material, and it gives me ideas. So I can see the value of it, while at the same time having kind of an internal resistance on a personal level to actually using it.
Sure.
So I guess I have to maybe play with it more so that I can figure out, how I like to use it, or if I want to use it at all.
Right, exactly. And there's no requirement to use it. It's just a tool, Yeah. Cindy?
I think I'm the same place. I think this might even be generational. It would be interesting to see on campus a generational study, but I'm keeping it not at arm's length in the sense that I'm resisting using it. I haven't used it a whole lot. I'm practicing, but I'm still a little suspicious of what it's giving me. Whereas I see the younger generation, which includes my grandchildren who are in elementary school, they take whatever comes out as this is gospel truth. And it happened a week ago. We were at dinner and they asked me a question and I gave them the answer. And my grandson turned and went, Alexis, da 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 da. And I looked at him and I said, you didn't believe me? And he goes, she knows better.
Oh.
And I went, wow. And it wasn't done disrespectfully.
Right. Yeah.
He didn't think anything of it. And I'm thinking, wow. And I think that's the same thing I'm noticing in my students, that they think this is a tool that's perfected enough that whatever it spits out, I don't even have to look at it. Not, it's good. And that's where I sort of, like I said, I'm keeping it a little bit at arm's length, because I'm so used to doing myself and struggling with communication to make it the best I can be. I just, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's a very, very valid point. It is not perfect. Like, actually, I looked up something. I need to be gluten-free, and I looked up something. Is this product gluten-free? And it actually told me that it was, and it's not. Because it is not accurate. It's pulling one flavor of this thing, whatever, was gluten-free, but it took that to mean everything. And I said, no, that doesn't sound right, because, and so you really do have to, you definitely have to check it. And, but years ago when the internet came out, there was always this thing, well, I saw it on the internet, it's got to be true. Is that really the case? Obviously not. Thank you.
And Cindy, I'll add, keep being suspicious. The best way to use these AI things that are coming out, be suspicious. And like I said, trust but verify. You're always going to want to make sure you're doing your own legwork. And Jose, I feel you 100% on what you were saying. It can really rob you of your voice, your authenticity. It can rob you of what you have worked so hard in your career to establish. So it's definitely something. And again, you said the more you work with it, the more it'll recognize your tone and your voice and how you want it to sound. But definitely in the beginning, when I first started using it for content creation, I was so vehemently against it, because I was like, this isn't me. Like, this doesn't sound like me at all. So I agree, and I understand the hesitation there.
For sure. Pam?
I just wanted to say thank you also, Nina, and everybody involved in putting on these sessions. I was getting, when you asked about the emotional reaction, I was sort of thinking about other people, especially people who are isolated and very lonely, and how seductive something like this could be, how easy it would be to forget there's no human on the other end. And someone earlier had said, her referenced the movie, and I sometimes hear people talking to their Alexa in a way that I find concerning as well. And given how tiny our households are becoming, and how limited human-to-human interaction is becoming for some people, I do find that piece of this really worrisome, because I just think it would be easy, especially if your hold on reality was affected in some way.
Yeah.
It seems like there's some potential there for some bad things to happen.
Yep, definitely. And I mean, there've been cases of there is an AI tool called Character AI. I don't know if anybody's played with that. And apparently there were some teenagers that listened to the advice of a character that claimed to be a therapist of some sort, and did a lot of harm to themselves. So you have to be very careful. Like, it is just a robot. It is not a person. And yeah, definitely. It's, like Nina, you or somebody was talking about, oh, Cindy, I think you were mentioning about, like, Alexa knows better. So fairly recently I was at my daughter's house, and her son was trying to bake cookies. So they named their Alexa Ziggy. I said, Ziggy, give me a recipe for chocolate chip cookies or whatever. And then it said, okay, fine, gave a recipe, whatever. And then said, Ziggy, play this and this tune, or whatever. And they got the wrong tune. They said, stop it, Ziggy. Like getting angry at Ziggy for not like Ziggy, stop it, and and like it's only a machine. It's not a person. It's not. Yeah, so it is definitely something to consider.
Yeah, and Pam, Caroline and I talked at length yesterday about the implications on education and the implications on healthcare and needing to be very, very vigilant as you use it due to the biases that it can have.
Yes.
And my previous role, I actually was working for a mental health tech company. So I would get responses from it related to mental health things that I knew were at best incorrect and at worst harmful. So yeah, there's a lot of, I think we're right. Everybody who has voiced concerns about, especially young people, using this without having proper education on it. That's a real fear, and there are real harms happening because of it. So the mental health piece, the education piece, these are all things we should be on the lookout for. And it's, question it. That's the best way, is to ask it, where are you getting this information from? And challenge it, right? If it's using language that you find to be outdated or not inclusive, tell it, because it's going to learn from you. And sometimes you got to be the advocate.
Yeah. All right. We're just about coming up at time. Any final comments, questions, things for further exploration?
I have one thing that's not necessarily for everybody, but Nina, are you from Erie?
I am.
And when you were a little girl, did you do karate?
Yes.
I'm gonna cry.
No, stop it.
Small world.
Yep.
Did you teach two little girls by chance?
I did, and those two little girls had wonderful parents and wonderful grandparents who rented an apartment to me actually, their grandparents rented an apartment to me on a couple of different occasions, the same apartment, 2 different periods of my life, and they were wonderful people.
Wow.
And the grandparents lived very, very close to that
Oh,
karate
that's
studio?
right. That's right. That's right. They had the one I place right there, the house. Oh my goodness.
They still do. Oh my God. We're gonna have to talk offline. This is
Okay.
so sorry. This is incredible.
It's a small world.
Bye, Cindy.
Well,
thank you all.
This was
Have
a
a
great
great
session.
weekend, everybody.
Okay, all around.
Bye.
Thank
You know where to find.
Bye-bye.
You know where to contact me, Nina. Send me an email.
I'll send you an email.
Okay.